Hi, welcome to this lecture on EnvAdapt adaptation of animals. Now on the third and the last video on the introduction of oxygen and carbon dioxide physiology, we are going on the convection. So far we have learned that the diffusion works only for short length. So that's why we have breathing. We are changing the air in the lungs. But it's not only limited in the lungs, and it's not only limited in the active convection, where we are using muscles to move the air in the lungs. But if you have constant flow of air or water through your respiration organ, then you can get oxygen from the environment, and then you can put carbon dioxide on the environment. And this has also ecological consequences. So you can have wind for air conditioning, like the prairie dogs. So far we have learned that in the surface, for example in the sand, there can be quite high partial pressure for oxygen. But if you are digging deeper in the ground, there can be accumulation of carbon dioxide and there can be breath of oxygen. But these prairie dogs, they have several burrow openings on different directions and on different altitude. And that's why the winding air is pressed through these small holes. And when the hole is getting smaller, the speed of the air is increasing. And that's why this gas is exchanged deep under the ground. No energy is needed, but of course that's not the respiration. But our respiration is working in the same mechanism. So the convection transport is boosting up through transportation of carrying the waste products and bringing usable gas for our need. And it works in both cases. In the gases, like in humans, we have the lungs, but it's also working in the aquatic solutions, in the water, but also in the bloodstreams. And we can have two different kind of respiratory organs. They have either unidirectional flow, so the air or the water is going all the time in one direction. Or then we can have this tidal volume, lungs, back and forth, taking the air in the lungs and then removing the air from the lungs. How we can increase this convection transport? First of all, we know that, to get the oxygen from the environment to the blood requires that there must be higher partial pressure in the environment on the oxygen. And we have learned that, you can bind the oxygen to hemoglobin. And let's take it a little bit simple that, let's assume that the air is not changed at all in the environment. So it's all the time the same. And that in that case, the rate depends on the total concentration of the gas in the fluid and the rate of the fluid flow. So what is the difference, or how much is the gas content in for example, the blood, and how fast the blood is circulating? And that's why the transportation can be boosted by carrying more oxygen or flowing faster. So we have learned that you can increase the partial pressure difference by binding the oxygen in the hemoglobin, because then it disappears. And that's why if you are increasing how much hemoglobin you have in the blood, you can carry more oxygen there in the blood. But the other way is that, you can circulate faster. Although because that's the way that it works, for example, in this Antarctic for ice fish. There is no hemoglobin, quite easily the oxygen in the environment and the blood, the partial pressure is in equilibrium. It's not anymore fluxing inside the animal. But if the circulation is fast, the oxygen is carried away. And then there's again oxygen can be taken from the environment to the blood. Let's think on the convection and diffusion, how they work together in our body. Okay, when we are inhalating air, there's about 0.5 meter length done with the active convection, the lungs. Then inside the lungs there is a quite thin layer between the alveolus of the lung and the pulmonary blood capillary, and this 0.1 millimeter is gone by diffusion. It's still quite a short distance, so it can be done quite easily. But then the convection moves the oxygen in the circulation. And in the muscle cell, there's again diffusion. Now even shorter distance from the red blood cell to the mitochondria. So the convection and diffusion are working together in our body. How it works? Let's think on these kind of streams. Okay, this seems to be like energetics. So we have a stream with several steps, and put a water wheel in the last step. Then we can use only the potential energy between the height 4 and 5. So although the water is going from higher there uphill, it doesn't matter. So that's why this potential energy must decrease in every step to make this gas transported from the environment to mitochondria. And similarly, in our circulation, we have oxygen cascade. That during the normal breathing, the partial pressure in the alveoli is about half of the partial pressure of oxygen in the environment. So we have less oxygen available in our lungs than in the surrounding air. But because we have the diffusion is only working in quite short distance, and then we have quite high hemoglobin, that's why the oxygen there in the arterial blood is having almost the same partial pressure as in the lungs. So very tiny partial pressure difference is sufficient to get the oxygen uptake from the lungs. Then, when we are going on the capillaries, it's a little bit more speculative what is the partial pressure of oxygen there. Because it depends on how much oxygen is supplied from the respiration, but also what is the consumption. But it's anyway, it's a little bit lower. And then, when we are in the mitochondria, there is a tiny amount of oxygen that is needed all the time to maintain this aerobic ATP production. And if the cell is resting, so it's not using as much ATP as it can produce, so it means that then these mitochondria are not working as fast as that they can. And in that case, this partial pressure of oxygen in the mitochondria is higher. But you can see that it's completely in the different scale than in the ambient air. Okay, the partial pressure is quite understandable, and it's the good way that it's very easy to calculate that on which direction the gas is flowing. But quite often we have different ways to describe, okay, how much oxygen we have. Sometimes in the aquatic solutions we tell, okay, how many milliliters of oxygen we have per liter, for example. And it actually makes the things a little bit more complex. In the standard conditions, the 1 mole of the gas occupied 22.4 liter. But as you can see, if you have the air in different temperatures, the amount of air per liter is decreasing, because the oxygen, for example, it requires more volume. So that's why this milliliter per liter is not constant. It depends on the temperature. And furthermore, we have learned that, okay, the solubility is depending on the temperature. And over here you can see that although even in air it was a little bit reduced how many milliliters per liter we have oxygen there in warmer temperatures, it's all completely in different scale than in fresh water or seawater. So it's this milliliter per liter is postulating that, okay, in case of 0 degrees of Celsius, how much there would be oxygen. And even then, we had to remember that, okay, if it's dissolved, there is actually 0 milliliter of gas oxygen per liter. Thank you.